folks, and welcome back to Every Naval Battle in History. Today we return to the Mediterranean, the first Arab Siege of Constantinople, and the dawn of Greek fire. So quite a bit to be talking about. Before we go further, just a note that the cover image this episode is once again an imagining of Mid-Journey and should not be taken seriously. Now, while all sides seem to agree that there was a siege of Constantinople and that the Arabs did not win, the rest is all hotly contestable. Thankfully, the Tang in China made a note of events, or the whole thing would be very hard to corroborate. The Muslim chroniclers did not have a solid grasp of Eastern Roman geography, so a lot of expeditions that way being recorded don't make for the narrative events appear to have deserved. Similarly, the main Roman source is Theophanes the Confessor, who was born 80 years after the events he wrote about. So I'll freely confess the narrative of what I'll describe here is a cherry-picking of things that might have happened, which fit into the narrative that makes sense to me. Periodically, students use these videos to figure out events, and I stress to them that these things are at best a starting point for real research. Having said that, the ones who get back to me did very well in their assignments, so that's good. So, to pick up where we left off after the Battle of the Masts, Islam burst out of the Arabian Peninsula like a holy flame, and most everywhere they went, locals decided they'd quite like to try out this new religion and possibly the lower taxing government it could deliver. The very rich and valuable Eastern Roman provinces of Egypt, Syria and the Levant all came under the Umayyad Empire, giving the Arabs access to the sea, and one suspects the seafaring Punic people who had been waiting a long time to square up with the Greeks. Just to be clear here, the Byzantine Empire is a modern term for what was in every real sense a continuation of the Roman Empire in the East, and those Romans were Greek speakers. From the Phoenician perspective, it had just been Greeks lording it over them for 1,000 years. Even with the losses at the Battle of Yarmouk and the Battle of the Masts, the Romans held a formidable empire. This map of the state of play in 650 shows what I'm talking about. All of modern Turkey, most of Greece, the good bits of the Adriatic coast, all the bits of the old Magna Graecia in southern Italy, the old Carthaginian Empire near completely, with the major islands of Corsica, Sardinia and Sicily and the North African coast. It would be a force to be reckoned with if it got its act together. Speaking of getting acts together, in 661 the First Muslim Civil War was concluded in great acrimony that resonates to this day, and the expeditions into Anatolia really started to get rolling. In 669, Fadala ibn Ubayd advanced as far as Chalcedon, which some Islamic writers took to be Constantinople, and frankly you can't blame them. You can see the bloody city from there. Here, let's warm up our old friend Street View and take a look. Oof. Well, that exceeded expectations. Around 670, a Muslim fleet wintered at Cyzicus on the southern shore of the Sea of Marmara, which has some real "the murder is calling from inside your house" energy. In 672, the Arabs sent 3 large fleets to secure the sea lanes from Syria and the Bosphorus. Emperor Constantine IV, who is still regarded as a saint for his role in ending theological disputes, appears to have taken the rising threat seriously and prepared for the coming siege in terms of storing food, rebuilding his fleets, and undertaking a promising research project. In 673, the Romans attempted a naval attack on Egypt, which did not go well, as the Arabs in turn captured more crucial islands. In 674, the invasion fleet arrived in the Sea of Marmara and landed troops on the European side at Hebdomon, which is very, very close to Constantinople. There they hit a problem which would remain for damn near a millennia: the Theodosian Walls of Constantinople. And on that mighty fortification, the fast-running tide of Islamic conquest broke. The Arabs stood around staring at the walls for years. As winter closed in, they'd ship across the Sea of Marmara to Cyzicus to hunker down in safety. In spring, they'd come back across the sea and lay a closer siege. Keeping this force of men paid and provisioned at great distance from Arab lands must have been crushingly expensive for little return. Meanwhile, Lombards and Slavs noticed that the Romans were preoccupied by the besieging army battering the Golden Gate of Constantinople and started picking off territories elsewhere in the empire. Finally, in either 677 or 678, because why would anyone know, Constantine IV was ready to go on the attack. And that little research project he'd kicked off before the start of the siege really paid off. If you haven't watched the Blackwater episode of Game of Thrones, just stop now and go see it. Okay, George R.R. Martin's Wildfire is a bit more magical and a lot greener than Greek fire. We think. No one actually knows. But for unsuspecting Arab mariners in the 7th century, it was close enough to Satan's own hellfire. It was probably something close to today's napalm, but without an explosive charge. It could be used in ceramic containers, like a modern hand grenade, or it could be used in what were functionally flamethrowers. The siphons, as they were called, could be large, like a spinal weapon in a warship, or small enough to be man-portable. The fire would float burning on water and would stick to surfaces or people it landed on. In later years, the Arabs would figure out counters to Greek fire, and it only ever really worked in low sea states. Waves would disperse its effect. But on that first encounter, it made an impression. Not just on the Arabs. Western Europe received a much-needed reminder not to tweak the emperor's nose. The cunning Greeks still had surprises in them. A peace treaty in 679 saw the Arabs paying tribute to the emperor, and a second Muslim civil war in 680 gave the Romans more time to reorganise. Unless that is, everyone was very confused and it never happened at all, and it was mixed up with a later siege in 717. Sadly, no one actually knows for sure. Strap in, folks, we've got lots more to cover as we take on every naval battle in history. Smash those like and subscribe buttons, ring those bells. You don't want to get left behind.